On three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Happy to be here with my favorite gal.
Oh, listen, ditto. I gotta tell you something. I did
Yeah.
something dumb.
Okay.
Did something dumb. I'm up in Canada, and uh, I had to run out to get some essentials
Of course.
from a store. And, I was perusing around the seasonal section because I don't need to tell
Oh,
you, we're mid-March.
yeah.
What's happening? The answer is,
Reese peanut butter eggs.
well, thank you very much.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
Easter, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at all the Easter stuff, and I came upon the mini eggs. And a Cadbury mini egg for me is heaven. Oh, it's heaven.
You do like the McFlurry
Oh,
Cadbury ones, right? Right.
my mouth is watering. Well, but that isn't that the cream egg? Do they do
Right. You
mini egg
said
ones too?
you said mini eggs. I confused all the eggs.
Like, listen,
You said mini egg. My brain went Cadbury. I remember she likes the Cadbury egg. You're right. I'm so sorry.
no.
Because the I don't know about where you are, but up here, I'm not on a roof. I don't, I'm not on the top of the planet. Stop it. But where I'm at, they have mini eggs pretty much all year round. They just are like, they don't call them Easter.
Right.
Easter is like a very specific section of time. Other rest of the year, they're just like, we have these small eggs, these small anytime eggs. And it's like, why are we? Okay.
I think you can likely get them in LA year round also.
Sure.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know that I've ever paid attention is the point. But
Of course.
here's what caught my eye.
Sure.
Okay? There's so many size bags now. So
Mm,
there's like a super jumbo, then there's like, a smaller, kind of seemingly more reasonable, then a
sure.
smaller again, and then just like the single serving.
4 eggs, get out.
And what did I do? Like a fucking idiot. I got a single serving bag. I thought, I just want a taste. I don't need more than that. They'll go stale. They'll go stale. Shut your mouth, Lauren Ash. What on earth? I got that little
Mhm.
single serve bag home. It was gone in less than the amount of time it takes me to say you're a fucking tool. It was gone immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Idiot. And then it's like, I know what you're thinking. Well, Lauren, you could just go back and get more. It's not that. What it is this. I am a woman who is over 40. I
Sure.
know myself. Know thyself.
Yep.
I know my needs. I know my
Yep.
strengths. I know my weaknesses.
Mhm.
I am smarter than this.
Sure.
Straight up. Straight up. Now
It's
tell me,
it's
do you really want to you me forever? Oh, oh, oh.
what we're saying is the biggest upset here is that you lied to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
I get that.
again, if I can't accept me for who I truly am, who can? And who I truly am is not a single serving mini egg gal. Never
Oh,
has
I
been,
get
never
that.
will be.
I get that.
What? I don't want to
Yeah.
have a little stash in the house. I'm not saying I have to sit down and house the super jumbo bag in one sitting. What I'm
No.
saying is there's not a planet in which I'm going to be happy having one serving of these for the season. Get out of here.
So what you're thinking is one-stop shop for the full season. Get
Right.
the jumbo bag.
It's a better value.
You know what? It tends to be. I do like when it's things in various sizes of bags, I will check and be like, how much am I, you know, how much is each, much am I paying per like 100 gram or whatever it is? And when you see that like a certain size is technically cheaper, that's my girl math for me to go, okay, yes, get the bigger bag.
Yeah.
Like those Ridgie's chips I love so much, they were on two for $7. I got two. I thought about
Oh
getting
yeah.
four.
I'm shocked you didn't.
I know, same. It's because I had already just bought one bag at a different store. And then I walked in there and went, oh, wow, and they're on sale? I mean,
Yeah,
I do tend to go for the larger bag because I always think to myself, I just want to save myself the trip coming back because
of
I
course.
know I'm going to come back, but I
Right,
won't admit I'm gonna finish those and then go back. Like
of course.
that's where I lie to myself with being like,
Right.
this will be enough. I'm gonna consume this and then there we go. My current obsession for the uh Easter treats, obviously, the Reese egg,
Hmm.
the flat one. They do Christmas tree shapes, I think,
Yep.
at Christmas. I'm just like, just give me make the egg year round for the
Oh
love.
yeah. Come
Make
on.
the egg year round. What are we doing? If mini eggs can do it, you can do it. But those I'm obsessed with. But I also love Kinder Egg does like a little one that's like hazelnut and like little tiny chunks of hazelnuts like inside a little tiny egg. It's so expensive
Mm.
for a small bag. And my biggest complaint is they're individually wrapped. So I'm just like peeling off the foil. And all I want to do is just pop so many of these in my mouth. And it's like the foil is what's keeping this lasting longer for you.
The foil is for our own good.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also love that I'm like, the bag is tiny, it's so expensive. And then I'm like, and then when I'm buying, after I've purchased it and I'm consuming them, because yeah, nothing will stop me. I love those. It's just a nice little kick because I know as soon as the season's over, they're gone.
Yeah.
And then what? What holidays coming up that they're gonna give me fun snacks? And the answer is Halloween.
Well, and
That'll be the
listen,
next one.
this is raising a great point because in a culture where we're constantly making a holiday out of everything,
We are.
can't we just kick up like, why can't we do St. Patrick's Day Reese shamrocks?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I
Why
mean,
can't
why
we
can't
have
we?
Reese flowers for the summer
Thank you very much.
all year
Or a
round?
boat, a little boat. What
Yep.
time? When is everybody on a boat? In the summertime. If you're ever on a boat, it's going to have to be in the summer, is my point.
Sure. Yeah, there's no reason they shouldn't be just making this year round.
Yeah. Like
And
just come up
people,
with an excuse. People
yeah,
will buy it.
people might say to me, you're gonna get sick of it. And I promise you I won't.
Yeah.
Because last year, as soon as they dropped the Easter candy, until the moment that it was no longer, I was buying so many packs. We still had those Reese eggs for another 2 months after they were out of stores because I'd stocked up so many for us. But I'll also, here's the other kicker, they used to sell them individually or in packs of four. And the 4 packs would be just a bit cheaper than buying 4 of them individually. Now, 4 packs are gone. Now you have to buy them individually, and they're expensive. I still
Bullshit.
buy them. I'm the goof at a grocery store being like, here's my armful of Reese eggs and the Reese nougat bar because that's one of my favorite things on the planet.
Oh, the nougat bar is next level. I also should just say very quickly, I realize I said that the Cadbury mini eggs may be available in the States or in LA year round. I never buy them there because the chocolate's different.
Sure.
So I just realized I was like, I will be sick if I don't give that caveat. I
Of
don't want
course.
people to think I'm messing around with American chocolate. Like, look, and this
Of
isn't,
course.
I'm not, this is no shade. It's just that it's different here. It tastes different.
It does.
It's a widely known, phenomenon. There's lots of things that America does better, you know,
Sure.
just saying. I just didn't want people to think I've like lost my mind and now I'm just,
Of course. Of course. We know where you stand, chocolately speaking.
thank you very much. And by the way, if people
Mm.
don't, um, I'm glad that they do now.
Yeah, I'm happy that this is the moment that you want to take a stand. I
I
like
gotta
that.
take a stand. Name that movie.
I gotta take a stand?
I gotta take a stand.
I, I have no idea.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh,
It's the Alan Ruck monologue towards the end. I always used to fast forward through it. It's a stunning performance, Alan Ruck, if you're listening. Um,
I'll be honest. I've maybe seen Ferris Bueller handful of times in
wow,
my
I've
life, like
watched it
barely.
probably 300 to 400 times.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of
Okay.
my main rotations as a kid. Um,
Hey.
anyway, again, it's not a you're gonna love this.
Yeah.
I fast forwarded through that monologue, not every time, but often. And I know that that makes it sound like, oh, this is the boring part. No, no, no. It made me feel so much that I was like, I can't watch this every time. So
That makes
again,
sense to me.
I need, much like I'm clarifying the chocolate, I also have to clarify Alan
Course.
Ruck's performance, especially as such a young actor, was
Of
stunning. It was a
course.
fantastic monologue, but it made me feel things that sometimes I just want to romp, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you have to skip over the part that you know is going to make you emotional
Right,
because
like
you're
the
not
times that I've
feeling it.
fast forwarded through the notebook, through the adult, the older version of them. And then it's
Yeah.
just a beautiful rom-com.
Yeah. Well, especially if you do the deleted scenes where he like takes her against a wall.
Blanche is here, everybody. Always great to see Blanche on the show.
It's just, I'd seen the movie so many times.
Of course.
And then someone like pointed out to me, like, have you ever seen the deleted scenes? And I was like, no, I don't even know. Like, I just picked up a pen just to drop it. I don't even know. Yeah. Yeah. Watching the older part of them, it does hurt in a way that it's like, I just want to watch her in the moment where she's like, do I want Ryan Gosling or do I want Jason Marsden? James Marsden.
James?
James Marsden. Um, what a fucking Sophie's choice. The answer is there's no wrong answer.
Well, yeah. And you know
I
what's
mean,
interesting?
you'll be
I
happy either way.
I saw someone on TikTok
Yeah.
advocating that she should have gone for James Marsden, which I
He
thought
he
was
was a more
fascinating.
solid choice. Yes.
Because I mean, listen, we're all charmed by Ryan Gosling, and
We
listen,
are.
he spent his life building her that house that she wanted, the dream house, all of the above. But
Yep.
like, look, he was volatile. They did fight,
They fought all the time.
yeah, and then it was like, James Marsden seemed like a really lovely guy, but I kind of
He
liked that
did.
too. I like that they didn't make him a total villain because then it's like
Yes.
you need to feel like, oh God, like how is she going to choose?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
100%. I think she would have been so happy with him. He seemed
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, I mean it's you know, and I did also think the part of the discourse that was happening in these TikToks I saw about this was talking about how, and I have felt this before too, that I think as women, societally, like, or, culturally, North America anyway, I feel like we're constantly being told, like, don't be shallow, don't be a gold digger, don't be with a
Sure.
guy because of this or whatever. And what these women on TikTok were talking about was like, but it's also okay if you want someone to be like stable. Like
Yeah.
it's okay
Yeah.
to want to seek a partner that's like willing to contribute and you know what I mean? Like, and I
Yeah.
was like, it is a really interesting point because I feel like so often in film and TV, historically, especially I feel like when we were young, it's like you're constantly being shown like, and then she went for the man who had no money but so much love to give. And that doesn't really happen in real life. It's like sure, I'm sure it happens for some. But it's again like it's like I feel like there's this kind of romanticizing of like choosing the mess of a man for lack of a better term. And I'm not suggesting
The
that every
fixer
man that
upper.
doesn't have money is a mess. I'm saying the tropes that we see, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, and that, yeah, it's like, where are the movies with and the jokes that these women were kind of saying are like, where are the movies where we see the woman like marry the like super, the guy who has like the really good job? Not
Yeah.
that he needs to be rich, but again, that it's like that he's like stable
They don't
and
argue. They get along very well.
right, 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 right. And it's
He
not this
treats her
like
nice.
torrid, over the top love affair where you can't resist
Yeah.
each other and it doesn't matter where, it's like, well, maybe the like calmer, more stable, um, less fiery connection is actually probably the one we should be like modeling for young people.
Yes. Yes, I fully agree because I really think, I mean, I don't know if I just call it media, pop culture, what I want to call it, but all of the shows throughout our childhood have, if nothing else, really, I don't know, like formed, I guess, the way that we see everything. Like, for example, and this is not a spoiler for this specific episode, it's just my most recent example I can give you. So, my husband and I earlier today watched the first episode of season 3 of White Lotus.
Yes.
And I don't have spoilers to give, so don't worry. But there's this man and a woman, and they seem to be friends, but very clearly it's like he seems to be interested in her, and she doesn't seem to be interested in him. And we see them for so brief a time. They're on screen less than 2 minutes for the entire episode. And I made a comment to my husband. I was like, oh, I just want her to be with him because he's such a good guy. And then I was like, Christy Lynn, you don't know that man. You
Yeah.
don't know that character. And I said out loud to my husband, the bar is so low. He seemed nice for a couple minutes. And I was like, well, that's the man you should choose. And I'm
Yeah.
like, or I'm like too quick to commit. Let's pull those reins. But immediately I was like, oh my God, he's the best guy. I'm like, because he was nice
Well, and we also
for a
don't know
brief
anything about
moment?
their backstory, right?
A
Like it could
hundred
be that
percent.
it's like it could be that she has great reason not to want to be with that guy. But I'm with you. I'm with you that it's like we have these like subconscious programmings, right? Where it's
Yep.
like when you see that dynamic, you go, "But he seems nice." And of course, she doesn't want to be with the nice guy. And it's like, "What are we talking about here? We don't have
It's
any
insane.
information yet."
Oh, I know. It's insane. I'm like, oh, this was ingrained. This has been ingrained in me since way too young. I repeatedly watched the movie Mannequin, where I was like, go, you want to be with the nice guy. He's such a nice guy. He's it's for you. It's not multiple mannequins, one mannequin.
Yes.
So he had a favorite, and it was Kim. She looked like Kim Cattrall. I mean, who would say no? Um, but it's just like the romanticized, like he's just so nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but the true crime world has taught me until he wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like just because they seem nice
Oh, yeah.
for like the smallest chunk of time, I was like, that's all it took. I was like, oh, he's so nice. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
I
Well,
might have
listen,
other opinions by the time this season ends, but who knows?
well, I will say this also feeds into something I'm sure I've talked about on the show before, but it's my constant one of my constant rewatch movies at least once if not twice a year is Reality Bites. And it doesn't
Oh.
matter how many times I watch it. I go, she should be with Michael. He's stable. He really loves her. Yes, he kind of messed up the edit of her show, but he was like, I'll fix it. Like we can figure this out. Like don't do this. And she goes back to Troy Dyer, toxic, unemployed, moody. You know,
Mhm.
but a handsome musician. And it's like Lauren, like, and every time I'm like, I know I should be wanting for her to be with Michael. And every time I'm like, but Troy Dyer. It's like he ghosts her. She can't even get a hold of him for a long period of time. He's not a great guy.
The bar is so low at
Well,
this point. And I really blame all the stuff that like that created this, where we're
yes.
like, he just has to be, he has to be nice for a brief time. And it's like, or kind,
We
stable,
Right. We
you know.
barely see Troy Dyer being nice. We see Troy Dyer being nice right before they have sex. That's the only time. Then he bolts the
Mm,
next morning, and then we see him, I guess, softened at the end. But again, it's like, yeah. And then I think it says more about me. It says more. Listen, I like that you're like, when I see things, I'm just like, she's got to go for the good guy who, if he appears nice, she's
mhm.
got to do it immediately. And I'm going like, she really should go for that nice guy, but I hope she goes for the broken one. Like it's not becoming.
Yeah, I mean, well, thank God it's just a movie, right? Yeah,
Auga,
look,
auga.
I mean, uh, I mean, is there okay? Uh, I get. Well, I don't know how to discuss it without spoiling it, but I did choose a movie the other night. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's from within the last few years. I think it's called The Greatest Hits.
Oh,
And the whole thing of it is this girl was in a car accident with her boyfriend. She had a severe head injury. He died.
oh.
And she has found that since then, when she listens to certain songs, it takes her back to that memory where she can like live out that memory with him. And so her whole thing is like, I'm gonna try and find the song where I can like save him from this car accident and make it so he doesn't die. And then, of course, over the course of time and her doing all of this, she meets someone else.
Well,
And then it comes to the whole like, are you going to spend your life living in the past with this guy who you have repeatedly referred to as the love of your life, who was like musician? And the more she would go back, the more I don't know if they meant for it to happen, but or if that's just how I saw it, but the more times she would go back, it just seemed like he seemed less and less as great as he was in the first ones. Like in the first memories, it's almost like the glasses are coming off and now you're seeing what
mm,
he's really like. He wasn't terrible. He still seemed good, but at the same time, I was like, well, okay, maybe I'm just projecting. But then it was like, are you going to keep going with him or are you going to go with this new guy? Um, and I'll say it. I won't spoil it if anyone wants to see it, but I will say she made the choice that I think she should have made in the end. So I was very happy about that. But you'll also love this. How did I come to choose that movie? I've decided my brain's overloaded,
yep.
tired,
Hmm.
tired. I hate decision making. It cripples me. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And so when it is my movie, pick, I can pick whatever I want. But I'm always like, I don't know. And I'll spend forever going through our movies, going, what do I want to watch? I don't know. And that's how my husband and I came up with this system of alternating movie picks to begin with, because we used to sit for like an hour going, do you want to watch this? No. Okay. Well, what about this? And it just, one day he just kind of snapped and went, you pick. And I went, okay. And he goes, I'll pick the next one. You just pick whatever you want. And I think I fucking picked Cruel Intentions 2, which is a weird, weird choice to
Wait a
make.
second. You've got carte blanche for the first time. You've got access to every movie made to that up to that day, and you said, not
Yeah.
Cruel Intentions. I need the sequel.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if we watched the other one first because since then, to keep track of it, we have a spreadsheet when we pick movies so that we can keep track of it. So for you, I will go to the top. And that's the only reason I remember it being Cruel Intentions, because I know for sure um, that that was the first movie on this list. Yes, um, it was me chosen by me, June 4th, 2012. So that's
Wowzer.
something. I gave it a 2, he gave it a 1.5. That's out of 5. Um, so he came up with this system because then it was supposed to be it's going to be faster and whatever. But it's now become like there's just so many movies and I have so little time that I'm always like, "Oh, I don't know." Some days you go into it and you're like, "I'm feeling this." And
Yeah.
you just go with it. So I went through all the movies we have access to, all of them. And I made a list of all the ones I wanted to see from that. And I split it between ones I have seen before and ones I haven't. I typed all those titles out. I printed those bitches off, cut them into slips of paper. I have two little zippies near the spot where I sit in the living room. One says new and one says old. And I take that bag like it was my pick last night. It was like, what are you going to pick? I picked up the bag that said new. I shook it around. I shoved my hand in it, dug around, pulled it out, and I went, this is what we're watching. I've never felt more free.
I love
And also,
that.
it was a decent movie. And it's been one that it's been sitting there and I've been going, oh, I want to see it, but every time I'm looking through movies, I go, and I talk myself out of it. But now I'm like, doesn't matter. The bag has spoken. So I immediately, if it's a bad pick, it's not my fault. It was the bag. So
Yeah.
fully take it off of myself and I just am like, here we go. And I feel if I keep going, I'll watch more movies that I've seen because it always ends up with me going, I don't know. And then I just go and pick like a comfort watch that I've seen
Right.
1,000 times where I'm like, no, I want to branch out. I want to see more things. And this, I think, is how I'm going to do that.
Now, what did it get? What did you and what did he give it out of 5?
Well, here's the thing. No judgment. I'm saying that because I know he listens. Um, he does not rate them anymore. He stopped rating them a while ago.
That's
I've
fair.
continued because I have to. Because when we write it down, if you we watch so many that I always know if he tells me a title and I'm like, oh, I think we've seen that. I need to see what I rated it to go, oh,
Right.
you're right, I did hate it. Because we've had some where we're like, I don't remember seeing that, and we've watched it, and I'm like, no, I really hated that. Um, oh, he did pick one since me, so I haven't rated it yet. I gave it a 2.75
Wow.
because I wasn't sure.
Specific.
Yeah, I know. Here's the thing. I think everybody knows I'm very specific about things. Usually I'm like, if I'm like, hey, that was good, 3 automatically. Sometimes it gets a little extra for something. But this one I was like, there there was just something about it. I don't know. I couldn't give it a full 3, but I gave it a 2.75.
Now, I already regret saying what I'm about to say because I know
Uh-huh.
you and I know
Oh,
exactly where this is going to go.
okay.
Have you
Yep.
ever thought about compiling a list of like what all of your 5-star picks were? Like, does
Um,
anything get a 5?
yes. Very rarely, but yes. I do. I have occasionally, because it's in this little spreadsheet, I have occasionally just sorted it based on um
Okay, I feel better
rating,
now.
so I can go and look. It's rare, but it does happen. And there are also sometimes where I'm like, "Ah," I used to be really hard about it, and I was like, I don't think I can give that a 5. And then one day I just snapped out loud and was like, then what's getting a 5? So then I just broke and I have a few 5s. I will say I thought that was the one I picked last night. I was wrong. He picked last night. He picked some new horror comedy
Mm.
called Heart Eyes,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm gonna say it was solid.
Wow.
It was solid. Um, I have not rated it yet, but here in real time for people, nobody cares. I'm giving it a 3.
Wowzer. Okay.
Yeah, and because I'll say it, it was in the spirit of like Happy Death Day, which I
Yeah.
really love, which has like solid comedy, but also like horror stuff that you're like, okay. And this one was like a rom-com and a horror movie had a baby. So there were like cutesy rom-com moments, but then people were getting murdered. And so it was just a really beautiful combination. I thought it was really well done.
I love that. Now,
Yeah.
listen, I also just need to go back for a second and say that when I
Of
said I
course.
regret saying this before I say it, the reason is that I don't know how to use a spreadsheet. So I didn't know that you were able to easily
Yeah.
compile that information. I had this
Yeah.
vision of like the next week we log on and you're like, "Well, you mentioned this." And so I spent 16 hours doing a color-coded chart that I had to,
Mhm.
movie by movie or whatever. And I was like,
Of
"Oh no,
course.
like I don't want to put this out to you and
Of
then
course.
give you work to do is the point."
Of course. Well, if you remind me in the last call, I can switch it and we can look through what I've rated. What are the top rated movies that I've
Oh,
rated?
I'm putting it on the
If we
list.
remember that.
Yep.
Um,
If you're interested in that kind of content, go over to patreon.com/true crime and cocktails to learn more about our
yeah,
subscription-based service where this is the kind of hard-hitting material that can
yeah.
happen over there.
You're gonna hear it there first. Yeah. This is
And
just look, I think I just really look for any excuse to have a list. Um, this is just very helpful to know who picked last. It's also helpful to be like, did we see that movie? And then we can search and go, we did watch it. Never watch it again. Those kinds of things. He did set it up in a way so there were like stats where we could see how many we like had the same rating for rarely happens.
Right.
Rarely happens. We have very different thoughts on movies. I'm coming more into like the comedy horror kind of area than I ever was before.
Right.
But I mean, I'm like, God, I mean, I guarantee Love Actually is going to be a 5 rating for
Of
me.
course. Sure.
And like, he's the type that he will watch, and I don't even know if these are real titles, but he'll watch like Cocaine Bear, um,
It's real.
Invisiraptor.
Don't know about
Um,
that.
there's an Australian one about a psychotic kangaroo called Rippy. Like he'll like, oh God, I can't even think of some of the ones, but like anything, oh, cocaine crabs from space, like he'll watch anything like that. Bless him. He does not, he picks those on the nights when I'm recording.
That's
So he'll
nice.
he'll choose because he knows, well, then I'm just gonna pick some over the top sappy love bullshit that he's gonna be like, no thanks. So
Right.
it
So you got to be
works.
careful
Yes. I
because
have to
no
be
one can
careful when
veto,
I,
but you may do a retaliatory pick if somebody picks something. I see.
yeah, yeah. So it's healthy overall, what we have. But it just makes sense. And it works for us. I'll say that.
Listen, I love it. And if I can recommend
Yeah.
to his tastes, go back in time to a little franchise, horror franchise, the Leprechaun series. And may I highly
Oh.
recommend for a laugh, a little film called Leprechaun in Space. Now, I have not revisited
Mhm.
this since high school, but I remember in high school, we thought it was the funniest movie we had probably ever seen.
Of
Um,
course.
I just remember sitting with one of my um, dear friends. Shout out to Jason Betts. Um, we uh, we were watching it, and at one point, I just went, "Why does he have a lightsaber?" And Jason goes, "Why is he in space?" And it was just one of those things that will never leave me. It was
Of
so
course.
funny. Anyway,
Of
Leprechaun in
course.
space. What a romp.
Keeping in
Um,
mind, she's recommending that for a night we record. Yeah.
oh, no, listen, what are you drinking over there?
I'm partway through a Slurpee.
I got a water. I got a Diet Coke. I got another Diet Coke and a Gatorade Zero. Um,
Hey.
I've, I'll be honest, I don't think I hydrated enough today, and I know that the Diet Coke's only working against me. I get that, so I've only got a
Sure.
small can going.
Of course, that's reasonable.
Thank you very much.
Oh my God, you could have pulled out a vat and I would have found a way to be like, understand. That seems right.
God bless. God bless.
That's what
Well,
I do.
listen, folks, we're talking The Kings of Tupelo. This, of course, is
Uh,
the Netflix documentary. On over on Patreon, we do a poll once a month where you can vote for what type of episode you'd like us to cover on the main feed of the show. This was February patrons poll pick. People voted for a Netflix doc, and this is what we've chosen. And I could not be more excited about this. If you don't have any idea of what this is about, have no fear. I've got a synopsis right here. The Kings of Tupelo, a Southern Crime Saga, is a Netflix documentary that tells the story of Kevin Curtis, a janitor and part time Elvis impersonator who discovers a severed human head in a fridge in a Mississippi hospital. When Kevin starts telling people what he found, he quickly gets fired, which leads Kevin down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories about black market organ trafficking. Soon, Kevin becomes so consumed with conspiracies that they completely take over his life, including ending his marriage and ostracizing his children. And somehow, this all leads to Kevin getting arrested for trying to assassinate the President of the United States. Was Kevin really responsible for the assassination attempt? Did any of Kevin's conspiracies end up being true? And what is Kevin's life like now? Christy Oxborrow will answer these questions and more, including the one that is on all of our minds. What the hell happened to the elephant?
for anyone who has not
Incredible.
watched the documentary, none of that made sense.
Yeah,
But I want you to know that was the most sense I could make of it.
I thought it was very cogent. Very cogent.
Thank you so much. Again, I, I mean, I was speaking to you about this earlier. The elephant was just like barely mentioned and then never mentioned again. And I was like, we can't leave it there. Don't worry. I didn't.
God bless you.
Oh, so a disclaimer. This episode will contain very brief mentions of suicide, violence against animals, and child molestation, So trigger warning for those who need it. In October 2023, we released an episode based on the true crime documentary Last Stop Larima. At that point, I truly believed that no cast of characters could ever match the Larima energy. And then the Kings of Tupelo came into my life. I don't know if I will be able to fully capture the truly outrageous characters involved in this story, but I am certainly going to try. If you haven't seen the documentary yet, I absolutely recommend it. If nothing else, because some of the quotes and events in the story just don't seem real. Just a quick example before we get into it. A man named Kevin Curtis writes a screenplay about his life, which is used as the basis for the documentary. Kevin said, and I quote, "No one supported me, but who's laughing now? It's Netflix, you bitch." I mean, out the gate, it really sets the tone for the
Yeah,
documentary.
it
It's
does.
it's also the fact he didn't say it's Netflix, bitch. It's Netflix, you bitch. Really, really got me. Um, Also, what else could possibly set the tone for this documentary? A video of Kevin holding a guitar while wearing nothing but a paper bag over his head with eye holes cut out in the shape of hearts, drinking wine and saying, quote, "Personally, I don't see anything wrong with having a few drinks and driving around with no clothes on."
Yeah.
Again, that documentary is really something you have to see to believe. And
It it really is.
even then, you're still not going to believe it. But it's entertaining nonetheless. But speaking of Kevin Curtis, Kevin was born in Tupelo, a city in northeast Mississippi with a population around 37,000. Tupelo is easily most well known for being the birthplace of the king of rock and roll himself, Mr. Elvis Presley. So it should come as no surprise that Kevin spent most of his childhood trying to become his own version of Elvis. Kevin said he was shy and bullied as a young child, but once he got his very own Elvis jumpsuit at the age of 14, everything changed. Kevin's mother even purchased the suit from Elvis's official suit maker in Memphis. Kevin said that putting on the Elvis jumpsuit was like Clark Kent becoming Superman. His confidence clearly increased, and in high school, Kevin won numerous talent shows. When he was 20, Kevin was a finalist at the Images of the King, which is an annual Elvis impersonator competition in Tennessee. Kevin later claims he had been a finalist in that competition a total of 7 times, but he did stop competing in it because he said they were, quote, rigged with hosts and judges getting kickbacks. But right around the time that Kevin was really excelling with his Elvis tribute act, Kevin's older brother, Jack, got the sudden urge to start an act of his own. Kevin questioned why Jack would want to, as Jack had always been the popular athlete in school. And I mean, in my non professional opinion, he just wanted to compete with your success because he always liked being the more popular brother.
Right.
I said what I said. But Kevin came up with the idea he believed would make both of them successful. Since Elvis had a twin brother named Jesse, who was sadly stillborn, Kevin got the idea to put together a twin Elvis tribute act. Jack was immediately on board. The act, which they called Double Trouble, incorporated full blown martial arts and not one, but 3 costume changes. Double Trouble made the Guinness Book of World Records as the first brothers act in history to celebrate the life of Elvis Presley. And believe it or not, the act was incredibly successful, especially with women. The Curtises said, quote, ladies were enthralled, they loved it. One woman in particular, named Laura, had an interest in joining the act. She was a Tupelo local who had a very deep-rooted love of all things Elvis. As Laura said, quote, Every girl wants to sleep with an Elvis impersonator once in her life. It's a bucket list. You do you, Laura. I
Yeah.
like the energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that, I mean, maybe not every woman, but perhaps every woman in that area.
Shockingly, Blanche has never once considered it.
Yet.
You're right. You're right. There's
Yet.
still time. So Laura joined the act, and soon after, she and Kevin fell in love. They got married and eventually had 4 children together. But that's not what the documentary said. Side note.
Oh.
So yes, the in the Kings of Tupelo documentary, only 3 children are mentioned. However, in numerous articles, it stated they actually had 4. I'll say it. I don't know why there's a difference there. There are 4 children. Kennedy, Madison, and Bramlett are mentioned in the documentary, as well as a younger child named Gable. It looks like the youngest was born after Kevin and Laura divorced. So maybe that's why only 3 were mentioned. Maybe the child was still a minor at the time of the documentary. I don't know. I do my best to bring you what I can find. I didn't go through birth records or anything, so it's tough to say. All I know is in 2013, the kids were 20, 18, 16, and 8. But at the end of the day, the story is about Kevin, not his children. So we're going to focus on him because the kids just aren't my business. Also, the New York Times referred to Kevin as a father of 5. So I don't even fucking know anymore. Like, maybe there's been a 5th child since with somebody else. I don't even know. So when Kevin and Laura started having kids, Laura told Kevin he needed a job that was more stable than something in the entertainment industry. So he started his own cleaning business called The Cleaning Crew, where he was often referred to as the singing janitor. In 1998, Kevin got a contract with North Mississippi Medical Center. Things were great and his business was very successful until, as Kevin puts it, then I found a severed head and the whole world fucking hated me. On December 17th, 1999, the hospital was having a Christmas party. Kevin was happy to join in, but when he arrived, a hospital administrator told Kevin that the drainage system in the morgue was backed up and she needed him to deal with it. Since the drainage system was oozing blood and other bodily fluids, Kevin entered the room in a full, like, protective hazmat type suit. With no ventilation in the room, it didn't take long for Kevin to become overheated and in need of a drink. He saw a fridge. His first thought was, God, I hope there's a Dr. Pepper in there. Bless him, because I cannot imagine any morgue that is stocked with pop or soda, if you'd rather. But hey, when you're thirsty, you're thirsty. Kevin opens the fridge, but instead of soda, he discovered several severed body parts, including the head of a man that he recognized as being in the emergency room just 2 days prior. Kevin freaked out, and then when he went home later, he told Laura all about it. Laura told him he should absolutely keep this information to himself. So Kevin turned around and told everyone he came into contact with. It was one of my favorite moments in that documentary where Laura says, I told him not to tell anyone. And then it cuts to Kevin going, I told everyone, which, I
The
mean,
edit was great.
the edit was amazing. Yeah. But of course, after spreading the word to enough people, Kevin was soon called into the hospital director's office, where he was handed a statement which read that Kevin entered an unauthorized area of the building and essentially saw nothing. Kevin refused to sign it. He was handcuffed, removed from the building, and not only was he fired, but Kevin was also banned from the hospital for life. And to that I say, can a hospital ban a person? Like, if he needed life saving care, would they turn him away? Or is that the only time he's allowed in that building? Is he just
Great
banned from
question.
working there? I don't even know. So Kevin then decides to make it his mission to find out the truth about the fridge full of body parts. And in a move that seemingly didn't make sense for a man who just lost his job, Kevin immediately went out and spent $3,500 on a computer. Once he had the full system set up, the first thing he did was go to the website Ask Jeeves and type in, "Is there a market for body parts?" And that was just the beginning of Kevin's journey down the rabbit hole on black market body part harvesting. He became absolutely convinced that the hospital was involved in some sort of illegal body part scam. He was determined to prove it. The North Mississippi Medical Center, or NMMC, released a statement which said, "We have an arrangement with the Mississippi Organ Recovery Agency, or MORA, to have organs donated by individuals desiring to do so. MORA harvests the organs and takes them immediately for transplantation to other hospitals. The NMMC does not receive payment for these organs." But even without any hard evidence, Kevin wasn't letting it go. He ended up on the dark web and spent most of his time every single day researching the underground industry, making it his crusade to share information with the world. Kevin set up 40 websites and blogs under a variety of aliases to share all his research. He said no one in his life believed him. He called Fox News. He printed all his evidence and mailed it to other news agencies, but no one seemed to care. During Kevin's deep conspiracy research, his marriage fell apart, and after 10 years, Kevin and Laura got divorced. For the sake of the children, after the breakup, Laura, who was given full custody, moved into the house right next door. In March 2003, Kevin used used his research to create House Bill 6631, which would stop the illegal sale of body parts in Mississippi. He sent the bill to his state representative, Steve Holland. Now, Steve Holland is literally the kind of character that pops in your mind when you think the words Southern movie villain. I'm not saying that Steve is a villain. I'm just saying, God, he has the vibe. Just for an example, Steve described himself as a malevolent dictator, but said didn't matter because everyone loved him. And then he said a quote, again, from a grown man politician, quote, "I could fuck a bull moose on the south steps of the Lee County Courthouse and gain 10% of the vote."
Oh, God.
Yeah. So Kevin sends Steve the bill to stop the illegal sale of body parts in the state, but Steve does nothing about it. Kevin calls and emails and faxes and writes Steve letters, but Steve ignores him completely. According to Steve, there was no way he was going to support a bill like that because Steve established the first organ donation program in the state, so he wasn't going to introduce a bill that could potentially kill any donations. But according to Kevin, the real reason that Steve won't introduce the bill is because Steve Holland fears what Kevin knows. But then to further add to the conspiracy, Kevin learns that aside from being the state representative, Steve Holland also owns 3 of the largest funeral homes in Mississippi. As Steve puts it, quote, "I put the fun in funeral."
No,
No,
Steve,
no,
stop. Go
stand down,
fuck your
Steve.
bull. Go fuck your bull on the court steps. Like, we don't have to do this too. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, stand down, Steve. Now, Kevin believes that Steve is ignoring him because Steve is in on the whole black market body part harvesting. Soon after, Kevin's solo Elvis act gets booked to perform at an engagement party in Washington, D.C. The person who hired him was Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker, who said he felt like an Elvis impersonator would be a lot of fun because the ladies would love it. I always love it's just the ladies are going to love Elvis. And I get that I am a lady, but he also had a hell of a voice and was a hell of an entertainer. And that's not sexually speaking. So I feel like non-ladies could be into it. I love
He
that I'm
also had
trying to
a
justify it.
he also had a hell of a voice and was a hell of an entertainer. Is just yeah. You know what? Hashtag justice for Elvis. He's not only for straight women.
I don't
Sound
know
off
why
in the
this is my
comments, folks.
soapbox.
Are you someone who doesn't identify as a straight woman and do you like Elvis? Let us know.
Was he beautiful? Yeah, for a certain few times. A chunk in there. Uh, I don't know why I was like, oh, Elvis doesn't get enough positive press. He also
It's
literally
never
married a child.
yeah, yeah. Also, again, like I just don't know that there's a lot of people out there being like he was only popular because of the women. Like I just have never heard that narrative before. But
it they're really pushing like the women loved it. Only the women. And I'm like,
yes,
I
yes.
bet the men had a good time if they admitted it to themselves. Again, Elvis doesn't need my good press. It's fine. My
I
good
think
press.
right now he's somewhere looking over us, just doing a slow clap. You know
I
what I
need to
mean?
believe there was a quiet thank
He's
you.
like, finally, somebody's saying it.
She gets it. Took decades. We finally got one.
I was a hell of an entertainer.
She's right. Good God.
Oh
What a
God,
nut job. Me,
it's a
not
gift in
him.
my life.
So Kevin claims after performing, Roger walked up to him, told him he was aware of Kevin's various websites, and told Kevin he needed to be careful. Roger never said whether that conversation really happened or not.
Right.
So, believing he found someone he could trust, Kevin overnighted a copy of his house bill to Roger. Months later, Roger finally responded to Kevin with a letter. If you ask Kevin what that letter says, he said, well, right out the gate, Roger said that Kevin had done a great job and that his research was really impressive. But then when you actually read the letter, it literally just says, thanks for contacting me. Sorry, I can't help. And that's it. There's no praise in that letter whatsoever. In fact, in the letter, Roger outright states that he's not the right person to sponsor the bill and then suggests that the person for that job is Steve Holland. So, of course, now Kevin is convinced that Steve Holland and Roger Wicker are in cahoots. Believing he had a huge story on his hands, Kevin reached out to James Everett Dusky, who published an independent newspaper in Tupelo. Everett said he'd be willing to publish Kevin's story, but then for whatever reason changed his mind and stopped taking Kevin's calls. In May 2003, Double Trouble was booked to headline the Elvis Festival in Tupelo. Days before the show, Kevin and his brother Jack were introduced to David Daniels, the assistant district attorney, who was brought in to play guitar, which is what a wild. I love the idea that you can be an assistant district attorney and in your spare time, you play guitar for an Elvis tribute band. You're living your best life.
Now that's the perfect man. He's got a stable job. He's reliable. He's a district attorney and
Mm-hmm.
musical artist, creative. You know what I'm saying? This is like a Troy Dyer and Michael put together.
Michael Dyer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So David starts flirting with Laura, who at this point is a single woman. Kevin gets incredibly upset and starts screaming at David to stay away from Laura. Then he went into a huge rant about finding a severed head at the hospital. According to Kevin, David said something along the lines of like, fuck your website, you're delusional and a liar. Kevin didn't like that. So he fired David as their guitarist. David responded by hitting Kevin. Kevin then grabbed a beer bottle and threatened David, who responded by pulling out a 9mm pistol. Allegedly, Laura and the children were in the area at the time. Kevin later said, quote, I'm about to die because of what I know. So even though Kevin got angry and physical with David, he truly believed in that moment that David had pulled out a gun because of Kevin's research into black market body harvesting. There was no thought whatsoever that maybe David was trying to defend himself against a man who maybe he felt was unhinged. But look, I'm not saying which man is right, which one is wrong. It was a heated argument. It absolutely got out of hand and unnecessarily escalated all around. But this is the moment when I started to worry about Kevin because he couldn't see that a man was angry because he was being physically threatened. To Kevin, all he could see was a man was angry because Kevin was trying to go public with the truth about a conspiracy. Even decades later, Kevin still believes that altercation with David Daniels was simply because David wanted to silence the truth. That night, Double Trouble went on to perform to a sold out crowd at the festival. Everything went well. The crowd really seemed to love it. Hopefully, everyone in the crowd, not just the ladies. But at the very end of the show, Kevin started talking about how corrupt Mississippi was. He mentioned the stolen body parts, how he got fired. He mentioned that the assistant DA, David Daniels, tried to kill him for what he knew. He said he'd never perform in Tupelo again. I think there was even a moment where he was like, this place is so corrupt. No wonder Elvis would never come back, which is a real slap in the face of, the Elvis lovers there.
Both the women and the men.
Thank you so much. Everybody involved. Yeah. Because Elvis is for everyone. Christy, you've got to let it go. He doesn't need the press. He's doing fine on downloads, I think.
He was on stamps. Like he's really a cultural icon. But not until today is he getting his real due. And that's what we do on this show, folks.
He was on stamps. Might be one of my favorite things. Oh fuck, I wrote that down. You're right. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. Here's the thing. He was fine. Like I didn't love him, so I don't know why.
You just a few minutes ago said he was a fantastic singer. He was a fantastic performer. Now you're like, he was fine.
Okay. Let me walk that back. He was a fantastic singer. He was a hell of an entertainer. But I'm also like, what? Why is this the hill I'm dying on today?
Great. Yes.
Because if I could go back to the 70s in the time machine that we're somehow going to get access to.
We've been talking about it for years.
For years. If I have to keep bringing it up at least once a year to give the OGs a chuckle.
Thank you.
So if I was given the moment, and it was like, this is going to go back to the 70s, you can either go see an Elvis Presley show or you can go see the Bee Gees. I'm going to see the fucking Bee Gees. Nothing is going to stop me. But Elvis was a hell of an entertainer. I'll still say that. But Barry Gibb? Get out.
What I like is that this has gone from like, I think Elvis is looking down on us. Now he's giving us the finger. He's like, fuck you. You're choosing the Bee Gees over me?
Oh, where in my head he's going, Barry Gibb, yeah. Like, even Elvis is like, yeah, I get that. I'd like to see Elvis hit those high notes. What?
We're on a roller coaster ride, which I love.
If there's ever an episode that we're going to go fully off the rails, all the way through it, this is it. This is it.
Oh, I couldn't be happier.
Oh, again, I thought Elvis would get mentioned in the places I wrote Elvis. I didn't think I was ever going to be like, someone think about Elvis and then turn around and go the other side and be like, too many people are thinking about Elvis. Oh, stand down. Again, hell of a performer. I'll say it.
No Barry Gibb.
Nobody is.
Nope.
I'll say it. I also love Bee Gees were my choice. Oh, what can I say? Chameleon. No one knows what I'm doing. So the outburst at the concert caused a rift between Kevin and Jack. The brothers then did not speak for a year. And the entire thing made Laura just embarrassed to even be seen with Kevin. She said whenever she felt Kevin wasn't acting stable, she just removed their children from the house. Jack felt bad for what Laura was going through. So in 1996, he hired, not nine, I don't know. He'd hired her earlier. I don't know why I wrote 96. Doesn't matter. So he ends up hiring Laura as his secretary at his insurance company, United American. And what I love about the city of Tupelo was that Jack wasn't just like an Elvis tribute act at night. He was like the insurance Elvis. So he like used it to sell insurance, which I'm like, that makes complete sense for the birthplace of Elvis. It makes sense. What do they do for the birthplace of Barry Gibb? Doesn't matter. Is there an insurance Barry Gibb? I'm just asking. So, to make things worse, Laura, who was singing with Jack's solo Elvis act for years, she continued to do so even after her and Kevin divorced. She said it was just business. Kevin was clearly offended. So he was also kind of pissed because people were starting to hire Jack instead of hiring Kevin. And Jack's tribute soon became the ultimate Elvis act in Tupelo. It became so famous that Jack took the act to Vegas, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico as part of the band. Laura traveled with him. And while she seemingly was kind of like living her best life, Kevin said, quote, "Meanwhile, I'm back in shithole Mississippi being Mr. Mom." Someone, I think, is angry he wasn't the one on stage. Kevin started to believe that there was something happening between Jack and Laura. It was never officially said. Jack was married at the time, but Laura said, quote, "We were close. Maybe we crossed a line." And that was as far as it was said. Not my circus, not my monkeys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whether there was anything happening or not, Kevin was angry about it. At one point, he ran into his brother at church, and Kevin choked Jack in front of a crowd.
Jesus.
He then screamed, quote, "If you're having an affair with Laura, I'll kill you dead as fuck." Dead as fuck is an interesting terminology.
Yeah.
Kevin then claimed that he started receiving phone calls late at night from people who would threaten harm to Kevin's children if he didn't stop talking about illegal body parts. After the calls, Kevin started to get paranoid and believed he was being followed. The person who hired him, nope, sorry. I've gotten so, this whole Elvis talk has me completely mentally broken. So at one point, Kevin claims his car tires were slashed, his car battery exploded, someone left bullets in his mailbox, and his house burned down. Um, Laura said, well, the car battery was faulty, and as far as the house burning down, someone left chicken on the stove. She added, quote, "Kevin didn't have a big grip on reality." Kevin was adamant that he was being targeted, but he refused to stand down as he believed it was his mission to expose the mass corruption in Tupelo, starting with its connection to the black market organ harvesting. Kevin went door to door asking the community what they knew about local corruption. Kevin happily shared his story with anyone who would listen, saying he didn't know how deep the conspiracy went, but he knew it involved very connected people because the assistant district attorney had tried to kill Kevin over it. This, of course, again is referring to when David Daniels pointed a gun at Kevin in May 2003 after Kevin threatened him with a bottle. David approached Kevin's brother Jack and said if they were willing to get Kevin help, he wouldn't press charges. But when Kevin continued to publicly accuse David of trying to kill him, David officially pressed charges in March 2004, about 10 months after the incident. When Kevin tried to get a lawyer, every single one told him they couldn't represent him because they had a working relationship with David, which was a conflict of interest. Because, of course, David was the assistant DA at the time, so good luck finding a lawyer who didn't have a working relationship with him.
Right.
So this means Kevin was forced to represent himself on charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. But in court, Kevin got heated. He started to yell. He was told if he didn't calm down, he would be found in contempt. He didn't stop. He ended up getting sentenced to 6 months in jail. Kevin said the entire thing was just a cover up orchestrated by the hospital to silence Kevin on the body harvesting conspiracy. He believes the hospital who fired him is the big bad, and said that the hospital is federally funded by Senator Roger Wicker, who is best friends with State Representative Steve Holland. To be clear, I think the men knew each other. I don't know if I'd say they're best friends, but I, I don't know who either of their best friends are. I don't know if older gentlemen openly talk about that kind of thing, but I hope that they do. So Kevin believes all these people are involved with the conspiracy and are doing what they can to keep it under wraps. The worst part is the judge who sentenced Kevin to 6 months was Sadie Holland, Steve's mother, and co-owner of Steve's funeral home business. So when
Right.
you look at it from that perspective, you can see how Kevin might jump to the conclusion that it's a massive cover-up. Although I question a part about Roger Wicker, because every hospital would receive federal money in some way, not just the one that fired Kevin. But, you know, in December 2005, Kevin finally got acknowledgement about his research when he was contacted by a woman named Karen Del Rey. Karen said her deceased father's body parts had been illegally harvested by a doctor in New Jersey. The doctor in question was a man named Michael Mastro Marino. It turns out that Michael was a dental surgeon who gave up his medical license after struggling with substance abuse. He then got his license to sell human tissue, which essentially encompasses anything that's not an organ. So we're talking like skin, bones, tendons, that sort of thing. A pretty big leap to go from dentist to human scavenger. But what do I know? Thing is, Michael wasn't getting all the dead bodies in a legitimate way. He would pay funeral homes $1,000 per body, then remove the tissue himself, sell the parts to body brokers, and fake the paperwork so it looked like the deceased's family gave consent for donation. Hundreds of bodies and numerous funeral homes were involved in the scheme. Michael was making like $1 million a year off it. Michael also didn't follow the proper guidelines for testing, so he took tissue which would normally be rejected, such as tissue from people who died of like cancer or AIDS. In these cases, he would change the deceased's cause of death to hide the truth about the health of the parts he was hawking. He managed to do this for 4 years before getting caught in 2008. Michael Mastro Marino pleaded guilty and agreed to pay back 4.6 million. He was sentenced to 18 to 58 years in prison.
So specific.
So specific. Michael died in prison from cancer in July 2013 at the age of 49. For more information on the body broker industry, check out episode 185, Unsolved Mysteries, The Severed Head. I know. I had that moment where I'm like, I've talked about body brokers, and I was like,
Yep.
what episode was that?
I wrote it down in my notes. I wrote it down. I was like, when did we talk about this? I remember us talking about
Well,
this.
you'll love this.
So
I had the moment where I was like, when did we talk about this? And I was like, I'm pretty sure it was that episode. I didn't fact check myself. So
I
they
think
might
you're
just,
right.
I think I'm right too, because I was like, we don't know who the head was. So we don't really have a lot of suspects. So then I was like, I don't know. And so I think, yeah, I didn't go back and double check that that's the right episode, but I'm so sure about it. If nothing else, you'll get to revisit. Hopefully, we said something fun in that episode. I don't know. So, when news about Michael Mastromarino's arrest was made public, Kevin said he felt like the biggest whistleblower in the world. Um, I don't know if there is a link between Kevin going public and the New York Police Department doing an investigation that eventually led to Michael's arrest. But who knows? I could be wrong. The point is, he was kind of right that there
Yeah.
was something going on. Kevin wrote a book called Missing Pieces, which details his research on the black market body parts trade. He released the first few chapters online to get some opinions. He said it made him public enemy number one. The local police started to follow him, which sounds like another Kevin conspiracy. But even his daughter Madison admits that yes, while Kevin was paranoid, the police absolutely did give him extra attention. They slowly drove up and down his dead end street every single day. Sometimes they would stop on Kevin's property and shine flashlights in his windows. Madison said it only exacerbated Kevin's paranoia and his belief that there was a conspiracy against him. In 2007, Laura called the police to report that Kevin was acting delusional, saying that the government was spying on him with drones. He also said he believed that helicopters were flying past his house and releasing a white powder into his yard. This belief made Kevin go even deeper on conspiracy theories and not just the black market stuff. We're talking things like 9/11, the JFK assassination, and chemtrails, which is the theory that the white condensation trails that are left behind aircraft are actually the government secretly dropping chemicals on people. Kevin posted on Facebook that musical artists Merle Haggard and Prince both released songs which mentioned chemtrails, and then both artists mysteriously died soon after. To be clear, Merle Haggard released What I Hate in 2011 and died from complications of pneumonia in 2016 at the age of 79. Prince released the song Dreamer in 2008 and died from an accidental drug overdose in 2016 at the age of 57. Is it weird that they both died in the same year? Sure. But do you know what other celebrities died in 2016 specifically? Carrie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds, Florence Henderson, Arnold Palmer, Gene Wilder, Anton Yelchin, China, Nancy Reagan, Gary Shandling, Harper Lee, and Alan Rickman, just to name a few. But if we are just talking famous musicians, well, then we can include Glenn Frey of the Eagles, Paul Kantner of Jefferson Airplane, Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire, both Keith Emerson and Greg Lake of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Leonard Cohen, George Michael, and David Bowie. Again, just to name a few. And yeah, sure, I'm sure none of those specific artists mentioned chemtrails in their lyrics. But you know who else has? Placebo, Lana Del Rey, and Beck, among others. So is it all really connected that you mention it and then suddenly you mysteriously die? I don't believe that, but you know what? If that's something you have an interest in researching, I'm not yucking your yum. You do you.
Sure.
It's not hurting anybody.
Of
By all
course.
means. On Facebook, Kevin said he was arrested 22 times throughout all of this. In the documentary, he said it was 25 times. Court records say it was closer to 4. I don't have access to all records, so I don't know what the actual number is. But throughout the documentary, it seemed like Kevin really went through a period where he spiraled while researching his theories. He said his family conspired behind his back to have him committed. From the best I can tell, they may have tried, but I don't believe they succeeded there. So life goes on its way for Kevin for over a decade. He continued to push various conspiracy theories while people just called him crazy. And then something happened that absolutely none of us saw coming. Around 2 a.m. on April 9th, 2013, while the Ringling Brothers Circus was in town, one of the elephants was shot in a drive-by. Police set up a tip line. Witnesses say they saw a white male in a white vehicle drive through the area at the time of the incident. Since Kevin Curtis owned a white vehicle, police started to consider him as a suspect, but then the entire investigation was put on the back burner a few days later when police received word that Lee County Judge Sadie Holland had received a suspicious envelope with a powdered substance. Sadie Holland was taken to hospital for quarantine, but soon released unharmed. The envelope was sent to Quantico for testing and discovered to contain ricin, a poison that is basically what is left over once you make castor oil out of castor beans. According to the New York Department of Health, ricin can be used as a powder, a mist, a pellet, or can be dissolved in water. It is deadlier than cyanide, but don't ask me the exact stats because some websites say 1,500 times more deadly. Some sites say 6,000 times more deadly. Honestly, I don't have time for this. Just know ricin is bad. But we need to put a pin in ricin for a moment, or I'm going to fall into the same trap that the documentary did. Because once the poison was mentioned, the story about the elephant got shoved aside. They never circled back. It drove me insane. Did they simply forget about it? Maybe. Did they think an elephant drive-by was somehow a normal enough event that we wouldn't have questions? Because I have questions, but I also have answers. The victim was a 39-year-old Asian elephant named Carol. She was struck in the neck with a bullet, but not seriously hurt. That was the key information I needed to hear in that documentary. Maybe I missed it, but I don't believe they said it. A few years later, Carol retired from circus life and was sent to live in an elephant sanctuary. Sadly, it seems that Carol has passed away from a heart-related issue in May 2024 at the age of 50. And because I know you want to know, or I just think you want to know, um, according to the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, the median life expectancy of a female Asian elephant in captivity is about 47. So, I mean, she made it a little longer. The culprit behind Carol's shooting in 2013 has never been found.
Mm.
Did I take more time searching for information about elephant ages than I did searching about ricin? Hell yes, for two reasons. One, the ricin search is not one I want on my laptop
Yeah, valid.
because I know ways I can clear history, but I don't think that really clears it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
So,
for the people.
yeah, right? So I'm like,
Not
no,
not
thank
not
you.
our people.
Right.
The feds. The
Yeah.
feds.
People looking into things like this.
Yes.
So that I don't need. And two, filling my search history with websites about elephants feels like something that Steve Irwin would be proud of. And that just makes me happy. And in times like these, for the love, let her feel happy. So I hope that answers all of your elephant related questions when it comes to the Kings of Tupelo. It's the fact that her name is Carol. Couldn't be happier.
It's very cute.
Right? So the same day that Sadie Holland received a ricin letter, another one arrived at the Capitol building for Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker. The Capitol was fully evacuated, but no one was harmed. And then soon after, a ricin letter was received at the White House. All three letters were the same. They stated, quote, "No one wanted to listen to me before. There are still missing pieces. Maybe I have your attention now, even if it means someone must die. This must stop. To see a wrong and not expose it is to become a silent partner." The letters were all signed, "I am KC, and I approve this message." All three envelopes were the same, with no return address. However, when the lab looked under a microscope, they could see the indentation of an address in the return area. Not any physical writing, but it looked as though someone had written the address on a paper on top of the envelopes, if that makes sense, like just kind of left an imprint, really. But the address that was written was the home address of Kevin Curtis. All three letters were postmarked Memphis, Tennessee. However, the barcode at the bottom of the envelopes proved the originating post office was Tupelo, Mississippi. So investigators knew the letters were mailed in Tupelo. They came from someone with the initials KC, and the letters very casually mentioned missing pieces, which is the title of Kevin's book. So it's not a surprise that Kevin was immediately the number one suspect. The local sheriff told the FBI that Kevin had a beef with both Roger Wicker and Judge Sadie Holland, two of the letter recipients. When the FBI spoke with Roger's office, they said, yeah, Kevin sends letters all the time. On April 17th, the sheriff called Kevin's brother Jack and told him, and this is a quote, quite possibly my favorite in this entire documentary: "Meet me behind the Cracker Barrel." Why am I so charmed by that? Because it took away any seriousness of what they were doing. We're talking about someone trying to assassinate the president, and he's like, "We're gonna meet up at the Barrel," which is fuck. I was charmed. So when Jack shows up behind the Cracker Barrel, there are a bunch of black SUVs full of various law enforcement. The sheriff then told Jack, heads up, like Kevin's about to be arrested. Members of the Secret Service, the FBI, Homeland Security, and a SWAT team pulled up to Kevin's house and removed him in shackles. He was 45 at the time of his arrest and taken to Lafayette County Jail in Oxford, Mississippi. He was interrogated by numerous law enforcement agencies, including the Capitol Police. An attorney for Kevin's family publicly stated that Kevin had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and that he had been prescribed medication 3 years prior. He said, quote, when he is on medication, he is terrific. He's nice. He's functional. When he's off his medication, that's when there's a problem. During his interrogation, Kevin was asked about the ricin. Kevin responded, quote, rice. I don't even like rice. I haven't bought rice in years. So immediately investigators were like, wait a minute. The criminal mastermind who supposedly sent poisonous letters to multiple people doesn't know what the word ricin means? So now they're starting to have doubts on whether Kevin was responsible. They searched Kevin's house and vehicle, no trace of ricin anywhere. Then there's the fact that making ricin is an incredibly complex process, which would require some level of lab equipment, which Kevin did not appear to own. And no, I didn't look up the process of how to make ricin. I'm just not interested in having that information on my computer. So, despite Kevin initially appearing to be the only suspect, there was no official evidence that he was involved in any way. So, on April 23rd, Kevin was officially released and all charges were dropped. When Kevin made a statement to reporters, he pointed out that he was a licensed reflexologist and said, quote, I'm going to donate 100,000 hours to all you ladies who need foot massage therapy.
No.
Which is just an odd thing to promote in that specific moment, but even more so when the documentary had already showed home video footage of Kevin licking Laura's feet. And hey, no shade, to each their own. I guess if you can't offer your foot massage services right after being cleared of a presidential assassination attempt, when can you?
I mean, he's trying to get the message out.
He
So,
really is. He really
yeah.
is. For a free commercial right there. Um, so police let Kevin go. But it was surprising since all the evidence was pointing right at him, which really just means someone was trying very, very hard to implicate Kevin in this crime. So they asked, do you have any enemies? Without missing a beat, Kevin said, James Everett Dusky. Now, he goes by Everett, so I'm just going to call him Everett because it makes sense. You may recall Everett from a brief moment earlier in our story. I mentioned that Kevin approached Everett to publish an article in his independent newspaper about Kevin's black market organ trafficking conspiracy. Everett had originally said yes, he would publish it, and then he kind of went back on that and then refused to take any of Kevin's calls. That really ticked Kevin off, and was just kind of the beginning of a massive feud between these men. Everett was a Taekwondo instructor in Tupelo, formerly a Wayne Newton impersonator. He often told people that he was from Boston. He was actually born in Kentucky and then raised in College Park, Texas, and Meridian, Mississippi, which is 145 miles south of Tupelo. When Everett first moved to Tupelo, he worked at a Taekwondo studio. However, Everett was fired because he had an affair with a client.
Mm.
Everett then renovated a building and opened his own dojo in 2005 called Tupelo Taekwondo Plus. That same year, he started publishing his own newspaper, which often featured scathing articles about local politicians. To make ends meet in 2007, Everett got a second job selling insurance. His boss, Jack Curtis, and at the time, both Kevin and his ex-wife Laura worked there as well. Now, this was the moment when Laura felt the need, bless her, to tell us that her nickname at work, which I believe was given to her by her father-in-law, was Sexy Terry instead of secretary. She said, quote, she tried to make the office a socially charged atmosphere because it was the only fun she had in life. Laura said flirting with Everett filled a void and made her feel attractive again. But of course, Kevin's not going to like that. And at one point, believing that something was happening between Everett and Laura, Kevin showed up at work and destroyed the office. But there was nothing going on between them because Everett was already married. Apparently, at some point after moving to Tupelo, Everett married and then divorced a woman, all in the span of a year. Then he met and married a fellow Taekwondo enthusiast named Janet. They had 2 daughters, but I think they were Janet's daughters from a previous relationship. I could not confirm that, but I don't believe biologically that they were Everett's. But even without anything happening between Everett and Laura, there is so much animosity between Everett and Kevin. And it all simply started because Everett refused to listen to Kevin's theory about black market body parts. When Kevin confronted Everett years later, Everett outright said he would never publish Kevin's research. Kevin then accused Everett of being paid off by the hospital. Everett, when asked about Kevin's research, said, quote, "I have seen better logic on episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants." As the feud between them grew, Everett showed up one day at work and told Kevin he was right all along. Everett had found proof that body parts were being sold in Mississippi. Everett then handed Kevin a bag of gummy candy that were called body parts. Kevin said, quote, "His intelligence is off the charts," in response to that candy thing. And I'm just like, what an amazing reaction to that very simple joke. But Kevin wasn't wrong. Everett was incredibly smart, so much so he was a member of Mensa. Everett even had a business card that had his insurance job information on one side, and then the other side, just a full brag that he was a member of Mensa. When would that ever be needed? Just when you want to brag, I guess. In 2007, Everett decided to run for Congress against Steve Holland, who hadn't had an opponent in over 16 years. Everett called Steve corrupt and said he was like Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard, which is hilariously accurate. To get his point across, Everett photoshopped pictures of Steve as Boss Hogg and posted them on Facebook. No offense to Steve, but look, Everett was just saying what I was already thinking. Because the second he spoke, I was like, he's kind of like Boss Hogg. And then Everett said it, and I was like, there we go. At the last rally before the election, Everett got on stage and called Steve corrupt and a thief. Steve's mother, Sadie, got on stage after him, called Everett a liar, and demanded he get down on his knees and apologize to Steve. Steve claims Everett really did it. Everett claims, no, he didn't. No one has said one way or the other. In the end, Steve won the election by a landslide, and Everett was humiliated. Everett then started working on other projects, specifically music, under the name Dusty and the Robo Drum. He released an album in 2009 called For Your Leather, It featured a song called Too Young, just a small sampling of the lyrics, just so you know where we're at. Quote, "You were too young. I should have known better. It's just that baby face of yours. One look in your eyes and I'm on fire, but baby, now this world is yours." I'm not in the industry. I'm not a songwriter, but I'm so upset that he rhymed yours with yours. It's not the point. It's not the point, but I'm like, be better, Everett. Ah, in 2012, Everett altered the band name to just simply Robodrum and entered them in the annual Bud Light Battle of the Bands. According to Everett, they were so well received, they went on tour, they shot a music video in California, and were nominated for Best Band at some sort of indie awards. Um, as of this record, there is still a band called Robodrum. They're listed as starting in 2010, so it's possible it's the same band just without Everett. It could also be someone else entirely. All I know is most recently they've released the Needs More Cowbell Ghetto Electro Funk edit of a song they call Hawktua. So I think that's all we need to know about
Seems they've
that
got their
band.
finger on the pulse of
On
pop
the
culture.
pulse, on the pulse. Um, so from the best I can tell, Everett was just kind of like going about life, doing things to make him happy. But the entire time, he was locked into this ever growing feud with Kevin Curtis. Kevin wanted Everett to take him seriously and publish his research in Everett's newspaper. Everett, not interested. And then Kevin slowly started to try and just almost become Everett himself. When Everett opened his dojo, Kevin started taking karate lessons. When Everett ran for Congress and made videos that ended, "I am James Everett Dusky and I approve this message," well, Kevin started every video he posted or any single post on Facebook always ends, "I am KC and I approve this message." Kevin started wearing suits to look more like Everett. Was he jealous of Everett's intelligence and the fact that Laura was flirting with him? Probably. Then Kevin started photoshopping pictures of Everett and his wife, Janet, but replacing Everett's face with his own face. He even photoshopped himself into Everett and Janet's wedding photo and then posted it on Facebook, which I'll say it, weird. Weird choice. Yeah, sure. Everett was photoshopping pictures of his politician opponent as a TV character, but he wasn't putting himself with the man's wife in a
Yeah.
wedding photo. Um, Kevin said, quote, "Psychologically and spiritually, you just know I don't think he likes me. I don't think he appreciates me." Kevin, you didn't ask for my opinion, but you're going to get it. Like and appreciation are two different things. If someone doesn't appreciate you, walk away. But I digress. For the most part, Everett just kind of ignored Kevin until Kevin made a fake certificate that listed Kevin as a member of Mensa. The moment he posted that on Facebook, Everett lost his mind. He immediately contacted Kevin, demanded that he take it down. It's amazing to me he was more upset about that than about Kevin photoshopping himself into pictures with Everett's wife.
Yeah.
Everett said he was the local Mensa officer who oversaw new memberships. Everett said the fake certificate was offensive, but not putting your wife in photos with him. That's not offensive. Okay. Mensa said, yes, Everett was a member, but he was never an officer. So there's that. So I mean, we're saying, I guess he lied. So what other things could Everett have lied about? Well, he claims he was so good at Taekwondo, he was part of the US national team at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. And if you're an OG listener of this show, you know that Lauren and I are very familiar with the 1996 Olympics. At the time, Taekwondo was not part of those Olympics. It had been a demonstration in the Olympics before, and they decided to make it an official Olympic sport, which means it wouldn't come in until 2000, which was the Sydney Olympics. So there was not even a Taekwondo demonstration at the 1996 Olympics. The only martial art at the 1996 Olympics was judo. The men's team comprised of 7 people, including Cliff Sonata, Orlando Fuentes, James Pedro, Jason Morris, Brian Olsen, Rene Capo, and Damon Keeve. I don't know if you noticed, but I did not say James Everett Dusky. So, was he lying about being at the Olympics? To what point? Just simply for clout? But speaking of the 1996 Olympics, shout out to male gymnasts Blaine Wilson and Alexei Nemov. You made the summer of 1996 a memorable one.
They did.
And you had teen girls running to a newsstand to buy newspapers. So that's something.
Yeah.
In January 2013, months before the Ricin incident, Everett was arrested on charges of indecent exposure. Apparently, he would stand at his living room window, and when schoolgirls would walk past his house, he would use a green laser to get their attention. And once the girls were looking at his house, he would expose himself.
Gross.
We go back to his lyrics. You were too young. He was sentenced to 90 days. I don't know how many he actually served. Months later, on April 23rd, the day that Kevin Curtis was released, police searched Everett's home. They found 5 positive hits for ricin in the house. They found latex gloves and a mask. On Everett's computer, they found eBay and PayPal records for a purchase of castor beans, as well as a document called Standard Operating Procedure for Ricin. In Everett's garbage can, they found paper that matched the exact paper the ricin letters were typed on. And if all that wasn't enough, while under surveillance, investigators caught Everett putting a box in a dumpster behind his dojo. It was a box for a Black & Decker coffee grinder, which they believe he used to create the ricin. On April 27th, 41-year-old James Everett Dusky was arrested on charges of developing and possessing ricin, as well as mailing threatening letters. When Kevin heard about the arrest, he emailed Everett's wife, Janet, and told her he'd be willing to step in and continue her martial arts lessons and be a father figure to her children to help continue Everett's legacy.
Creepy.
Kevin, this man potentially framed you for attempting to assassinate the president. Why are you concerned about his legacy? Also, he didn't die. He's still alive. There's not a legacy that needs to be had. And also, the woman's husband was just arrested. Stand down.
Yes.
Everett took a plea deal where he would plead guilty and be given a 25-year prison sentence with no right to appeal. He also pleaded guilty to 3 unrelated counts of fondling for inappropriately touching 3 former students at his dojo.
Gross.
The students were between the ages of 8 and 10.
Gross.
Everett was given an additional 20 years for those charges. The sentences are to be run concurrently, or rather at the same time. So after all this insanity, with Kevin's conspiracy theories and his feud with Everett, does this story really come down to Kevin pushed Everett over the edge and Everett responded by framing Kevin for an attempted presidential assassination? Well, Everett says he's innocent, and he is the one being framed. According to Everett, he is a former CIA operative who had damning information about the Obama administration and that people wanted him out of the way. Everett claims while he was at the Olympics in 1996, he was recruited by the CIA. And while he was on a mission in 2004, things went very wrong, and Everett had to start his life over again completely, so he randomly chose to move to Tupelo. Then in 2012, while working counterintelligence for the CIA, Everett was given financial documents which allegedly proved someone in the Obama administration was funding terrorism. And look, I know the CIA isn't going to publicly come forward and go, yeah, he's one of ours. Uh, but if Everett possibly didn't go to the Olympics, then how was he supposedly recruited? And look, I know I don't know how the CIA works in real life. All I have to go on are movies. So, cinematically speaking, does a covert operation like the CIA typically let operatives walk away after a failed mission? Especially one maybe with allegedly sensitive information? Um, Also, Everett claims the mission failed in 2004. Well, how long was the mission? Where was it? Because in 2000, Everett was in Tupelo as a guest judge at a martial arts contest. How long was he supposedly trained by the CIA before being sent on a mission? Everett makes it sound like he was picked up at the Olympics and immediately sent out on missions without training, which is insane. In the mid 90s, Everett was a radio personality at SL 100 in Laurel, Mississippi, which is like 200 miles south of Tupelo. He went by the name Dusty Wolf. I assume that's why his band was Dusty and the Robo Drum, just assuming. Then he magically joined the CIA and then just what remained in the Mississippi area? I'd love to know if there is anyone who can account for his occupation and or whereabouts between 96 and 2004. I have a few questions. But again, we know he was in Tupelo in 2000 for like judging a martial arts contest. So they would have had to find him somehow. So was he in the area already for years leading up? It doesn't make sense. But Everett claims he was framed and that Kevin Curtis was just a low-level patsy. He said the rice and letters are bigger than them and someone is trying to silence him. So let me get this straight. Everett gets recruited in 1996. He leaves the CIA following a failed mission in 2004. The CIA then just let Everett live a normal life until they reel him back in 8 years later. It makes no sense. Where are these supposed documents now? I'm not saying the government doesn't cover shit up because we all know they probably do. I just am having such a hard time with Everett's timeline. But after Everett was arrested, Kevin Curtis thanked Everett for making him famous. Kevin was flown to New York. He did so many TV interviews, after which he said he was no longer active in the world of conspiracy. To quote Kevin, I have retired the sword of justice. But just 9 months later, Kevin Googled Everett's case when he saw a picture of his former lawyer's husband with the attorney general. So the woman who defended Kevin in the Ricin case, her husband was seen smiling with the attorney general at a party. And Kevin said that made his brain start churning about a possible conspiracy, and now Kevin believes that Everett was framed. As of this record, Kevin continues to post about conspiracy theories on his Facebook page. His son Kennedy said, quote, "My dad likes to be the hero because then he doesn't have to be himself." I wonder if this is also why Kevin likes to entertain as an impersonator. Over the years, he branched out from just being Elvis. He also does acts based on Prince, Conway Twitty, and Roy Orbison, among others. Judge Sadie Holland, who received one of the Ricin letters, died in November 2020 at the age of 87. Her son, Steve, who, was a state representative and a funeral director, personally embalmed his mother's body himself.
Nope. Nope.
He said,
Nope.
quote, "I didn't want anyone else to do it." Assistant DA David Daniels, who charged Kevin Curtis with assault back in 2004, died on March 8th, 2025.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, he was 75 years old. No cause of death has ever been announced because typically it isn't. But according to Kevin, he says that David took his own life and the sheriff's department is lying about it and covering it up. I don't know how much we believe that. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, James Everett Dusky remains in a high security penitentiary in Tucson, Arizona. He is set to be released in August 2034. But don't worry about Everett. According to him, quote, I got to watch the end of American Idol last night, and the person who won should have won. All is right with the universe sometimes. Um, I'd love to know which season he was referring to, but honestly, I haven't watched the show since season 7. Shout out to David Cook. I know it came out in 2008, but your song Light On still has a place in my various playlists that I make, always on a road trip playlist, always. And honestly, when I Googled to see what season David was on, because it was a bit and I wanted my bit to be accurate, I saw he released a new song like 6 months ago called Dead Weight. I looked it up. I gave it a listen. Honestly, it fucking slaps. So you go, David Cook. Reporting for this absolutely wild ride, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Listen, there's just so much to talk about. Let's take a quick break, hit the can, grab a drink, and we'll be back to talk more on the Kings of Tupelo episode of True Crime and Cocktails.
So sorry.
Oh, wait. Sorry, something happened here. Sorry, we got to stop for a second. Sorry.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Kings of Tupelo documentary. What a wild ride. I watched this a few weeks ago and I messaged Christy right away and I was like, this is so batshit. We've got to do it on the show because for me, it was like every time you don't think the story can be crazier, then something else happens. Like the reveal that, wait a second, Kevin really didn't send those letters and wait, maybe he wasn't lying. And wait a second, this other guy was allegedly working for the CIA. Like, this is crazy. You can't script this shit. Like, it's so out there.
Yes.
Every detail. My God. All right. I'm just gonna see what my notes were here, although I know I was chiming in a lot during this episode. Okay, going back to thank you very much. Going back to the very beginning, he's working at this hospital. He says he's getting hot and he wanted to open the fridge for a Dr. Pepper. Here's my question.
Yeah.
Is that the truth? Or was he snooping around?
Oh, Snoop.
Because I don't know about you.
Snoop-a-loop.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be my instinct in a morgue to be like, surely there's something I can drink in here. Like, to me, it felt the fact that he said the specific of the Dr. Pepper. I was like, that's somebody making up a lie. That's somebody trying to be really specific to be like, I was really thirsty and I was hoping that inside that fridge was a Dr. Pepper because that's what I drink because this is completely a true story. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it also feels like, what if you opened that fridge and there was Dr. Pepper? You'd drink somebody else's morgue Dr. Pepper?
yeah. I'm going to say something. I don't want to be consuming anything in a morgue.
No.
I think that's when you take a small break. You go and you get
you
a
leave, you remove
leave.
that. It's a hospital. There's got to be so many vending machines in that building with your Dr. Pepper.
And water, like water fountains. I'm not saying that that's like, but honestly, if you're desperate, right? Like, come on.
Yeah. If you need to put water in or if you need liquid in your body, especially water. If anybody's drinking water right now, find your water bottle, have a little drink. I don't know when the last time was I had water today. I'm just reminding you your water is there.
And I've somehow started a protein shake in the break. I don't know. I was like, didn't get enough today. Cram some in at 11:30 at night. Then I wrote down, wait a second. We talked about this in another episode. And I want you to know I fact checked you. And it was indeed the Severed Head Unsolved Mysteries episode of our show, episode 185. That was it.
Nice.
You said he went on the dark web. And I know we've talked about this before. I can't remember if it was on the show or not. But all I'll say is I don't want to know how to access the dark web. And of course, part of me wants to Google out of curiosity. You can't do that. How to access the dark web. I don't want to end up on a list.
No, we don't need that.
You said cahoots. I enjoyed that. Okay, where are we? What's next? What's next? I think, yeah, the detail of the drive-by shooting of the elephant. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, what was the real rationale? Was it somebody getting up to misadventure? I know it was never fully, you know, investigated, which is a shame. Hashtag justice for Carol the elephant.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
but if it was Kevin, and we have no real evidence, but you know what I mean. So I'm wildly speculating. But I
Of
guess my
course.
question is, what would that have done? Was it him trying to be like get attention to raise awareness to spread his message? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. It's just such an odd thing to do.
Especially because he is absolutely the type that if he's going to do something, he's going to do it big and loud and make sure everybody
Right.
knows to bring attention to the cause. He's not just going to do something quietly and move on.
I just don't understand the motive for anyone to do that, but I
No.
certainly don't understand the motive for him to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, the details also of the Ryson letters and that it of course he's been on the police like I think one of the things that maybe really I responded to in this story is as you watch and we know that Kevin has been diagnosed bipolar, we know that he's been on medication at various points and whatnot. um it's interesting to me because one could listen to his rants like when he was in the concert and he went on the rant about like
Right.
this is everything that's happening and whatever. You could listen to them and you could go, ah, this guy's crazy, right? And I don't
Sure.
use that word typically, but for what we're talking about here, someone could write them up and go, oh, that person's just crazy, which is what people did to him. But then the reality is there stuff that he's saying that was happening, that was going on. And by the way, he was framed. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
there was no evidence. Now, granted, I understand why the police would immediately go to him. It appeared like he had, signed off the letter himself. He had beef with these people. Like,
Yes.
how often are people really framing other people? I feel like that's fairly rare. Um, but it's one of those things where you start to go, wait a second, like some of this stuff is coming true and he is getting framed and the police are kind of giving him a hard time as was corroborated by his daughter. Like then you start to go, maybe this person, maybe this isn't a part of the mental illness. Maybe this person isn't quote unquote crazy at all. Maybe it's just that there's no real way to handle these things that's going to sound like you're not out of it, right?
Mhm.
Like because of course the stuff he's talking about sounds fantastical, but then when you hear about that story, was it New Jersey? Um, where he was,
Yeah.
I mean, my God. And again, we know the body broker industry is a real thing. We talk about it in episode 185. Um, so I guess for me, I just think that part of what I found fascinating about this was how we would potentially write off somebody and discount them because maybe he is um eccentric. Maybe he was being very loud in a way that made it seem like
Sure.
he was unhinged or whatever, term you want to use. Um, again, we do know that there is some mental illness that is a factor also, but that doesn't mean that he's automatically making things up and lying. Now, I know there's other things that we do know he made up. Like he obviously wasn't a member of Mensa, for example. But you know what I
Correct.
mean? Like I think that that was just part of like the humanity of it that I found so interesting was that it was like that line becomes so blurry and it's like
Yes.
not right for us to write somebody off because they sound or their behavior seems a certain way when it's like well this is a perfect example of some of what he's saying was and by the way who knows if those politicians were involved
Yeah.
it's absolutely plausible that one of the people the person he had to go to get the bill passed also happens to own the three biggest funeral homes in the state.
Yeah.
I mean, the more and more I watched it, the more and more I was like, I kind of believe him. I mean, I know that like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that he did have paranoia, that there was things that were happening that were exacerbating some of his kind of symptoms and whatever. But like at the core, we've heard weirder shit on this show.
Yeah. And
Again,
his really lined up.
yes. And
Like,
it's odd, right? Like,
yeah, like if Steve Holland was not involved in funeral homes, then I would be like, okay, well, that him saying no to the bill, like it's just it okay, either way. Like it's not one way or the other. But when you're like, he said no, and he's part of the funeral industry. So I'm like, so yeah,
I
while
mean,
it might sound crazy, it's like it does. He didn't take big leaps. Like I see his train of thought. I see why, like it's very clear that it's like, yeah, that would make sense.
well, yeah. And again, this other case that we talked about in this episode, there has to be a funeral home contingent involved in order
Yep.
for this to be successful. We know, I remember, again, I don't remember all the details because these episodes, we do them and we flush them. Um, our memories do that for us. We don't have a choice.
Yep.
But I do remember there was funeral homes involved in that body brokering as well. So, I mean, again, not to sound like whatever, but I'm like, to your point, yeah. And we also know that Steve Holland had apparently introduced a bill promoting organ donation, right? Now
Yeah.
that's not that saves lives. I'm not suggesting that that means that he's harvesting body parts and selling them
Sure.
on the black market. I'm not saying that at all I'm saying is, yes, when you look at all of these things, do I think that Kevin had a point? I absolutely do. And I don't know, and we'll never know, right? We'll never know whether or not that was happening, or we would have, I think we would have found out by now if that was happening. Meet me behind the Cracker Barrel. What a gift. Um,
It just takes like any seriousness out of it. When it
yeah,
wasn't like, meet me here, come to my office, none of that. It was meet me behind the Cracker Barrel.
so good.
Just
It's so
so
good.
charmed.
And the funny thing for me also, the thing about Everett and like him suggesting that he's this former CIA operative, um, I guess for me, he loses credibility when he's touching children.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not me suggesting that people in those kinds of positions couldn't also be perpetrators of those crimes. Of course they could. But in terms of like my wanting to believe him,
Mhm.
it diminishes.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so he says he was recruited at the Olympics. We know that Taekwondo was not a sport at that time. We know that he wasn't
Correct.
on the judo team. Then I'm like, well, is it possible that his new name didn't exist back then? Did he have a different name? Should we
Oh,
be looking
sure.
at pictures of men on this judo team to
I
see if one of them is
I
him
I
under a fake
tried to look
name?
at some of them, but
But then he was a radio DJ before under his name, right?
well, under
So
Dusty Wolf.
fair. But people knew who he was in the area prior
Yeah.
to the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that it's like, well, it's if there's record of him existing before the Olympics when he was allegedly recruited, what would have happened, again, we don't know because we don't actually know how this works, but
Of
from
course.
movies and TV, what I would assume is he's living his life as John Smith. He gets recruited to go into the CIA. John Smith is going to die, right?
Sure.
Or disappear, whatever. And then he takes on a new identity, and that's how he moves forward. But if we have
Yeah.
record of this man before his quote time in the CIA, it
Yes.
blows that out of the water. So,
Yeah.
and we also know that this man has sent multiple ricin letters to government officials trying to frame someone else. So, you know, just putting that out there as well. Um, the detail that now, okay, the detail that Everett said this is bigger than him and Kevin. The letters are bigger than him and Kevin. Here is my question. Why on earth would the government
Mhm.
try to frame Everett framing Kevin? How would then it's like, well, then if the government's doing it, then they would have either framed Everett to get him arrested
Yeah.
or they would have framed Kevin to get him arrested. Like, why the double deal? Like that doesn't make any sense. There's
Yeah.
so many. What was their ultimate goal? If their ultimate goal was to get Everett in prison, why would they frame him framing someone else? They would just frame him. It doesn't make sense.
Oh, 100%. It makes no sense. I mean,
But then,
yeah, you frame the one guy because you want him to go down, or you frame the other.
right.
Like, uh, you're really taking a leap to be
The
like,
only
we're
other
gonna frame you
possibility,
framing him.
the only other possibility is Kevin did write the letters.
Okay.
somehow managed to get rid of all of the evidence of doing so. And then the government planted evidence in Everett's house, using it as an opportunity to frame him.
Sure.
I guess. What that feels again like there's a
Insane.
lot of,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot happening there. But the detail that Kevin gave up conspiracy theories, but then got reeled back in and now believes that Everett was also framed is incredible. It is again, it's like this is I
Mhm.
was rooting for you, Kevin. I
I
mean, and listen,
know.
maybe he's right. Again, will we ever know? Probably not. Um, the specific that Kevin has gone on to do more tribute acts, and it was
Yeah.
Prince, Conway Twitty, and Roy Orbison. And all I have to say is one of these things is not like the others.
It's an interesting selection.
Conway Twitty and Roy Orbison, that feels like it's in the same world. I get that. That feels like it's even
Sure.
in the Elvis kind of world. I mean, different, but but
Sure.
Prince is just, I mean, so far away.
There's a slight different genre. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
Anyway,
he's a man of many genres.
yeah, yeah, he contains multitudes.
Yeah.
And then my final note is Everett is set to get out of prison in 2034. If he's going to keep touching kids, please keep him in.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Gross.
I also want to
Gross.
know what happens when he gets out in 2034. Like, is Kevin going to pick him up?
Oh my God.
Are they going to become friends to like further
If Kevin
try
hasn't
and,
already
you know,
pitched a reality show for the two of them going on a road trip, I'll be shocked.
we'll watch it.
Every minute, every damn second of it.
Yeah.
Every second of it. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Oh, there was one other thought I had.
Yeah.
You said I'm not a songwriter, but I don't like that he rhymed your with your.
Yes.
I think I can say it. I've written enough songs. You are correct. We don't
Thank you
we
very
don't do
much.
that. We don't
Thank
do
you.
that. I mean, that's
Oh, I know.
but by the way, that's also the least of our worries in a song about being in love with an underage girl, which he then, of course, was exposing, and then, of course, we know
Yeah.
also touching. So,
Look, if I had the time, I would have read through all of his lyrics. But I just took a stab that maybe Too Young might have lyrics that were inappropriate.
yeah. And
Who
spoiler alert,
knows?
it didn't disappoint, while also deeply
Di-
disappointing.
di- yeah, it's weird to disappoint and not disappoint all at the same time. The only disappointment I had in this was I had become determined to try and tell you, because I was talking about Elvis impersonators, and I wanted to be able to give you a number of like how many Elvis impersonators
Right.
are there like worldwide, and the numbers varied so wildly that I was like, I can't give those. I mean, between one site was like, between 250,000 and 400,000 probably. And I was like, that feels insane. And then they were like, it's probably closer to 2,000. And I was like, you can't,
That's a
that's a
wild.
big leap. It's a
Oh my
big leap.
God.
And then I was just like, God, I mean, but there could be thousands of them. Because again, he was a hell of an entertainer. I'm back on that. And it's got to be worldwide because I mean, I can't talk about Elvis impersonators while living in the province of Saskatchewan, Canada, without shouting out Saskatchewan's own Rory Allen. That is our Elvis impersonator for the province. Like anybody who lives in Saskatchewan is going to be like, Rory Allen, of course. Like, so I have to believe everybody has their own, you know,
Yeah.
Elvis tribute act. And I guess Rory Allen is Saskatchewan's.
Well, God bless him. And God bless all 2,000 to 400,000 of them that may or may not exist.
I I'm fascinated by it. I mean, do I want to go and see a bunch of them? No. But
No.
I mean, I can't imagine the work that takes.
Yeah.
It's got to
I
be
mean,
exhausting.
getting a proper fitting jumpsuit alone. Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. Truly, this was a real joy for me. I feel like this was this was a bit of a romp.
It was.
It's fun when we do some without murder because then it feels, it's a nice light. There's a lightness to it.
a lighter and also like who doesn't want me going off the rails talking about various male singers of the past.
Listen, I live for it now and always. And we thank you, dear listeners, for coming with us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails. If you're interested in a little bit more bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, West Virginia University murders.
Okay, this is in the news, I believe, currently.
Oh, this one, well, maybe. I don't know. This one's old.
I am thinking of another case. We'll discuss this after we stop recording. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
I mean, good night, Barry Gibb.
Good night, Elvis. You're a hell of a performer.